Hey, everybody. Great to be with you. Today, we're going to be looking at chapter 5. This is the focus on deep level learning. Deep level learning is the idea of how do we relate ideas together, and doing that in complex reading, writing, and talking. So how are we relating ideas when we read? How do we do that when we write? How do we do that when we speak? A big emphasis of this chapter is on oral communication, really developing students' ability to be able to talk through complex sentences so that they can write using those same complex sentences. And we do that through the power of conjunctions, subordinated conjunctions, appositives, fronted adverbials, and lots of other routines that we can use to really help students be able to compare and contrast ideas together. So the two habits here are developing that conceptual understanding and then being able to apply that using things like claims, evidence, and reasoning, really being able to form effective opinions and arguments in lots of different domains, whether that's in mathematics or in history, science, English, language arts. How do we bring that into those places? So these reflective questions are really focusing on, to what extent are we implementing these types of habits in class with students? And then what are we finding in terms of trends and patterns with certain students in how they're engaging in habits 7 and 8? You then move into reflective questions of how are you integrating this within some of those dispositional habits, which are really, really important when we're doing this kind of work. When we think about navigating when we're navigating challenge, working with others, this is a really, really important part of that deep level learning, because it's so much about social construction of these ideas. And then it really gets into, to what extent are we engaging in these high impact routines day in, day out around habit 7 and habit 8. So lots of concrete practices that were shared within this chapter. This is the longest chapter in the book, and there's lots of practices. And one of the reasons why is because this is a place where most of our standards or learning outcomes in a syllabus sit. Right? Our state, if you're looking at state or national outcomes, most of them sit at deep learning. And this is where it's really around defaulting to deep in many ways. How do we really get students to engage in conversations around relating concepts? And one of the things that we spent a lot of time on in this chapter, and you've seen it a few times in other chapters, is around declarative and procedural knowledge. Declarative is the what of something, like what is photosynthesis? And procedural knowledge is the how. So how do we write a paper? How do we perform a lab? And a big part of this is that declarative knowledge really precedes procedural knowledge. Facts precede skill. So how are we making sure that students are reading, writing, and talking about that declarative knowledge, and then building the procedural skills around that so that we can be more effective, more fluent in having those types of really important conversations. And what we're going to find is that declarative knowledge is so critical as students engage in more of that transfer level work and going back and forth between surface and transfer, is that declarative knowledge. So that's where those reflective questions really come in. And I would spend some time as a team having that conversation. And I would use one of those protocols to have that discussion. We've talked about the what, so, what, now what. It may be effective to talk about, maybe use the 4A's protocol or a wraparound protocol. Though I would pick a protocol and use that to model deep level learning and have that conversation. And then we go right back into those next steps of need it, see it, start it, and show it. And that's where we talk about those interactions again, some evidence around that, and then getting into what would we see in a few weeks? How would we then start that? You can see that it's, again, how do we make sure that it's small, making it manageable? How do we stack it, right? How do we make sure that these are things that we can do routinely? And then we get into how would we show that over time. I've introduced a couple of protocols here, the consultancy dilemma and the critical friends protocol. They are deep level protocols that are helpful in giving and receiving feedback. The critical friends is a really nice protocol to do before you launch something. It's also great when you end. I love the consultancy dilemma as you're going, to be able to talk about what are some of the challenges of implementation, both from your end of it, but also as what you're seeing with students in terms of their interaction with peer-to-peer, their interaction with their content, their interaction with teachers. So anyway, that's the idea around that. And then, yeah, so I hope you enjoy that, talk through that, have that conversation, and then we'll come back. This is one of my absolute favorite chapters, and I just love the opportunities that we have with engaging in this work. So thanks, everybody. Bye.